You can probably tell by the title of this video that this one is very different. I will be addressing some very adult themes in this one, so if you're only here for my tutorials, I'll probably give this one a skip. But for those people that have been following my health journey, this one is an absolute roller coaster. Over the past 7 months, I ended up in £12,000 debt due to one person's mistake. So in today's video, I'm going to share my story and the events that led up to me having a mental breakdown, and what it took to fix these mistakes and become debt-free. Now, I've tried to make it as entertaining and light-hearted as possible, but obviously it's a very serious subject that I'd like to address. Hi and welcome to Project Diaries. Today's going to be a bit of a different one. Now, I want to start off with a big positive thing. I've reached over 500,000 subscribers, 500,000. I'm absolutely amazed at just how popular this channel is getting. I just cannot thank you enough. It genuinely means so much to me that 500,000 people love my content, which is why I want to do today's video. A lot has changed since my last update. My world kind of crashed, so it's been really tough for me to talk about what's been happening in my real life. I get trolled a lot. You know, I'm kind of damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't. If I talk about my illness too much, people don't like that, and if I don't talk about it enough, you know, if I'm my happy bouncy me and then all of a sudden become ill, and some people say that I'm manipulating my audience and trying to get sympathy and stuff, which is why I've delayed doing this video today. I wanted to make sure that I was a little bit more healthier or more well-being than where I've been since November. So there's probably going to be a lot of cuts in today's video. I don't really know what I'm going to talk about. I'm just going to let it flow. But I want to go back to pre-global situation. Now, I still can't talk about the C word, I don't think, but I'll get into that in a minute. Now, for those who hasn't followed my channel for a while, I had a leg operation a couple of years ago that went really badly, and I didn't get any aftercare. And thankfully, a lot of my subscribers put a Just Giving page together and helped me get a spa treatment and some physio. The video's here. So because of that, I was bedbound for 10 months and I couldn't walk for 18 months. And just as I started getting my health back to normal, lockdowns happened. But I just started getting back to work. Now, if you don't know, I'm a nightclub promoter, tour manager for rock bands. I do festivals, DJing, all of those kind of things. So I just started to get back to normal before the lockdowns happened. And obviously, because we weren't allowed to work, it seemed to have hit hospitality really, really hard. I don't know about you, but we were just not allowed to work at all. But at the same time, even though I couldn't do my main job, Project Diaries went through the roof. It was absolutely amazing. Everyone seemed to turn to health and gardening over that lockdown period, to a point where I even had TV networks coming after me. They offered me my own show. It was a 10-part series, which was incredible. I mean, I did the interviews with Chris Packham, and I was on This Morning, Holly Willoughby, Philip Schofield, all of those guys. You know, Lee Gardner was a bit of a buzz, and Project Diaries was incredible.
And I found this guy called Lee Gardner, and I was looking, and he had these videos. It blew my mind. He's amazing. So here he is.
Well, hopefully you've enjoyed today's video. I'm going to send you back to Holly and Phil in the studio. Good luck with the lockdown. Stay safe, and I'll see you soon.
He's good.
Don't you love him?
All of those guys, thank you so much for that. It was a perfect time for me. But what happened is that I'd finally just started to get my care with the NHS, but because of lockdowns, I wasn't able to get it. So my popularity and my work ethics and everything were going through the roof, but my health was declining. So my doctor then put me back on morphine, and I was going through a lot of hell. You probably saw my 6-week challenge. I ended up being on so much medication that just all I needed was hands-on treatment of physical deep tissue therapy to help my pain, but all they were doing was pumping me full of pharmaceuticals. So I was definitely getting ill, even though all these demands for me were increasing. So I had to turn all of that down. It was getting really hard work, but I decided to then put all of my effort into Project Diaries because it was going so well. So I started to branch out. I then started to do the nutrition videos, the kitchen diaries videos, anything that I thought would help people in that situation, I tried to do. But after, you know, the 3 strikes and I'm out video, I then got into shadow banned. I was shadow banned. So my income for a few months was amazing, but after that shadow ban, I lost about $1,000 a month. So I couldn't do my gigs, I couldn't DJ, I couldn't tour. So with no income, I had to look to the government. So I was still offered the grant, but because we had no idea when the hospitality and clubs and stuff were going to open again, I couldn't take that loan because I didn't know how long the interest was going to be, whether it was no interest or whatever. I couldn't do that, it wasn't an option for me. So I went on to something called working tax credit, which basically is a subsidy that you had to work more than 16 hours. For being a disabled person, you had to work more than 16 hours a week, which was great because I was already doing that for Project Diaries. Now, I've been self-employed, I've done my taxes every year since I was 18. So this was slightly different. Now, tax credit, you need to let them know by the end of July 31st. And then they have to calculate how much they're going to give you the following year, which I knew this. Anyone who's familiar can appreciate this. Brown letters now give me a massive source of anxiety. So on the 13th of July, I made a phone call to say that I was having health problems and that my bookkeeper was having an operation she'd been waiting for over a year. So I just needed an extension. We just needed a couple, maybe a month or so. So when I spoke to the guy, he was like, oh no, you don't need to worry. You have to do your tax returns at January 31st. I was like, no, you're wrong. It's July the 31st. And no matter how much I said to him, he was adamant that he was right. So I put the phone down and I was like, great, I've got until January 31st. 2 weeks later, I received a letter. The HMRC wanted £5,500 back and I had 3 weeks to pay it back. So I then phoned the HMRC tax credit line to say, look, there's a massive mistake. I haven't even had that amount of money over that time. Why do I owe you this money? So when I spoke to the guy, he was like, if this is our mistake, we'll get to the bottom of it. Leave it with me, we'll contact you within 48 hours. They never did. A few days later, I then got another bill, 2,800. So I'm nearly 8 grand in debt. So I phoned them again. And the guy again was like, sorry, there's nothing on the system. There's no complaint filed. If it's our fault, we'll deal with it. But if not, I can put up a payment plan for you. I was like, well, it's not my debt. You've made a mistake. It's a systematic mistake. You need to fix it. So he then said, okay, we've got 48 hours. We'll get back to you. Nobody did. So this went on. And I phoned them 30 times between August the 31st and October the 13th. And they all fed me something different. Some people said that the complaint had been accepted. Some people said the complaint hadn't even been filed at all. I had no idea what to do, but all they were coming back with was...
Computer says no.
Now bear in mind, each phone call takes around an hour and 14 minutes just to speak to a human. And every time I spoke to someone, they were saying that because they're working from home, because of the lockdown situation, they couldn't transfer me to anybody higher and that they would get back to me within 48 hours. All I was getting was brown envelopes that were more and more threatening. And every time I called, they were trying to set up a payment plan, but I didn't owe the money. I then phoned, actually, I'm not going to say when, but I spoke to somebody and she said, when I started this job a few months ago, I was just given a booklet and a mobile phone. That's all the training that we had. And I was like, no wonder this guy fed me a load of rubbish. Like, there was no way that he was right at that point. Please, can you put this complaint through and like expedite it as to the highest level that you can and get them to get back to me, because I am losing my mind at this point. I don't know what's happening and more bills are going on. Well, at that point, I'd obviously missed my self-assessment returns as well. So the tax return HMRC part was then giving me troubles. My bookkeeper was doing a lot better. We then got all of my taxes together. We then tried to file it, and when I filed it, they then said that I hadn't done the previous year's tax returns, which is a lie. So I logged into the gateway. It's the HMRC website. I logged in, everything was there. It's all in their system. So I phoned their help desk again, an hour and 45 minutes before I could speak to someone. When I spoke to the guy, he said he doesn't actually have access to the HMRC network, so I would have to guide him through it. I said that all of my stuff's on the computer. He said, no, it must be on your computer. There's nothing in our system. I was like, how do you know that? You don't have access to your system. So he said, he guided me through so I could do my tax returns again. So I submitted it. And again, didn't even get an email, didn't get a letter, didn't get anything. There's no correspondence for me doing my tax returns. So apparently this guy's advice actually overwrote anything that I did previously. So I later found out this was the only evidence that I had that could prove the fact that I did this before. We then went through a new messaging system that I knew nothing about and found out that I had another £1,900 in fines. I was getting charged £100 a month for my late fees that I knew nothing about. So apparently, because I chose to go paperless on my tax returns, stopping them from sending me this huge booklet every year to try and help the environment, it actually meant that all of my messages were going through this online messaging system. They never once sent me an email or letter to tell me this was happening. So I then had to file another complaint about this department, but this guy had already helped me overwrite all of the evidence that I had, so I couldn't prove that I actually did my tax returns from last year. Now, as soon as I put my complaint in with working tax credit, they froze the account and didn't charge me any more interest while the case was going on. But with the HMRC and customs, with self-assessment, they still charge you monthly fees, despite the case being in their hands and admitting to me this was going to take months even to open this case because they were so backed up. Now at this point, between the HMRC, the NHS, the DWP, the local councils and the fact that all of my bills were going up, I had 14 cases that were just becoming so overwhelming. And this is all before the April price hike. Now at that point I had two options, well three. My first option was an advocacy service. Now I phoned 53 different charities and advocacy services. Now none of them had experience in this situation. So I was either going to have to train them up, which would just cost me too much energy that I wouldn't have, or just allow them to learn as they go, which would lose deadlines. Or the second option would be to pay somebody. They were £30 an hour. So if you're thinking that it's going to cost me, it's going to take an hour and 45 minutes even to get through to a human, that's nearly 60 quid before they've even spoken to the first person. Now obviously the amount of phone calls that I've done, Lord knows how much that would have come to. So the only option was to do it myself. So I started to have mental health problems. I was kept in this loop. I was thinking about it before I went to bed, and I was dealing with it the second I woke up. I wasn't eating, and at this point I was £12,000 in debt, or they were saying that I was. There was no debt. They were completely wrong. So I then started to call the Samaritans, who were great. The people on the other line were great, but Samaritans then passed me over to Mental Health Crisis, and Mental Health Crisis then put me over to a local mental health team in case somebody needed to come to see me, because I was in a suicidal state at that point because of loads of other things that were going on with my health, fighting the NHS, fighting the HMRC. I had the DWP problems as well. I don't know if you've seen this problem, but they stopped my money, and they wanted me to prove that I didn't have any treatment from the NHS. So I don't know how I could prove something that didn't happen. Now if you remember, the last time this happened to me, I had over 750 different medical documents and I had to get a judge involved just to win my case. But because of lockdown, I've not even been able to see my doctor or get any treatment whatsoever, so there's no reports or medical records that I can send as evidence. It was baffling to me. I then spoke to my GP. He then gave me somebody called a social prescriber. Now this is a new position in the NHS where they're designed to help you with admin, bills, getting appointments and navigating the NHS, because it's so complex now. It's getting silly. But the problem now is that even though I've got a social prescriber, because of data protection, the other companies and institutions wouldn't deal with her unless I was present. So because we kept going on and off with lockdowns and she was working from home sometimes, I couldn't exactly go around her house. So all the weight and stress kept coming back on my shoulders. But it wasn't all bad. Lockdowns and restrictions started to ease and hospitality started to recover. It really started to feel like these times were past us and I was able to do what I love again. And venues started to get back to normal without any restrictions. So to give you a quick insight, it takes me a minimum of a month to promote one event. Now my gigs aren't just like everybody else's, it's pretty much the same as what I do with Project Diaries. I've created a community. After being locked up for so long, everyone was so desperate for these events and just to get out and socialise. But a week before the event, this happened.
We'll also make the NHS COVID pass mandatory for entry into nightclubs and venues where large crowds gather, including unseated indoor venues with more than 500 people.
So I usually team up with a live venue, so they do the live event and we do the after party. Because of the new ruling, they then had to drop their capacity down to 499 people. This then meant that amount of people can enter the venue without having the mandatory pass. But for any venue that was open later than 1 o'clock that had a dance floor, we were told that everybody had to have a mandatory pass. So even though everyone was packed in tight at a live gig, no one needed to be tested. But then venues would have to kick everybody out and test them on the way back in for the after party. But because my event was 3 days after these rules were implemented, people just couldn't get the passes. But as I said, my events aren't like everybody else's. I really cater for disabled people. We have wheelchair access, people with Asperger's and learning difficulties, and it's a real social lifeline for a lot of people, including myself. And after being in lockdown for so long, people were so desperate to get out and socialise but couldn't get these passes. And because this caused a national panic, places then started to run out of lateral flow tests, and every pharmacy in this city ran out, including the NHS's website and the government website. So how were people supposed to be able to do this? Well, the reality was they just couldn't. So instead of a sold out event, these were the only amount of legal people we could let in with passes. We had to turn so many people away, and public transport was also limited, so there was no night buses running. I still had to pay my staff and the promotion team, and instead of being the huge Christmas celebration that it usually is, it ended up costing me everything I had left, both financially, mentally and physically. I also felt really bad for a lot of people that were desperate for this event. I even offered free entry to some of my regular customers that were struggling between eating and heating. This was again due to the fact that the government were giving out wrong information about the warm home discount.
2.2 million people supported with the warm homes discount, Mr. Speaker, worth £140 per week.
Per week? Now this wasn't a mistake. Boris actually reiterated this several times within the same Prime Minister's question times. But he's either ill-informed on his own policies or completely lying. So if you don't know what the warm home discount is, it's a scheme where disabled, low-income and elderly people can claim back £140 per season on their overall energy bills. But not everybody qualifies, but as I had personal independence payments, I've qualified for this over the past few years. But my energy suppliers always applied for this for me. This year, they said I had to apply myself or they didn't accept it. But again, this was misinformation because it actually says this about the DWP automating these payments on their website. Plus, going back to when Boris said this,
2.2 million people.
Now, while 2.2 million sounds a lot, there's actually 14.1 million disabled people in the UK right now. But at the time he was making these claims, the scheme was already closed, leaving myself and millions of other disabled people without a discount. At this point, I was really going through a nightmare because my mental health was in such a state. I went through the local mental health. I even went up to something called Rapid Response, Mental Health Rapid Response, who admittedly have said that Rapid Response is a terrible name for them because all they do is answer the phone quicker than all the other services. But when I called them, this is all I kept getting.
Thank you for calling the Mental Health Rapid Response Service. Please hold while we connect you to a member of our team. The Mental Health Rapid Response Service is unfortunately busy dealing with calls at the moment. Please try calling again in a few minutes. Alternatively, please call the Sussex Mental Health line on 0300 5000 101.
So this just means all the mental health services just loop back on each other. I've gone from Samaritans, Mental Health Crisis, Sussex Mental Health, Rapid Response, but they all just go round and round and round, and everybody else has said they can't help me, and Rapid Response is my last call. So I had no choice but to keep calling Rapid Response, and seeing as everyone else was pointing me in their direction, I really had high hopes of what they could do for me, but I was so wrong. And I found out the hard way. Now I'm hoping I just got the wrong person who was having a bad day, but instead of helping me, she decided to start giving me a lecture. She sounded really condescending and felt like she was talking down to me. Rather than asking me questions, she started suggesting things that I'd already been through, and she caused me to have an anxiety attack while on the phone, and she had no idea how to handle me. For a system designed to help people that are on the edge, she made me worse. She then suggested I go full circle, go back to my GP and potentially take some antidepressants. This just infuriated me even more because she just wasn't listening. Medication would not get me out of this situation of systematic failures constantly putting me in debt and making me chase so many institutions at the same time. Plus the side effects of previous medications outweighed the good anyway, so there's no way I want to take these. I just needed help, but no one seemed to be able to give it to me. I was in tears. I couldn't figure out what was going on. Everything was so overwhelming. I was worried that debt collectors were going to come, bailiffs were bringing back old PTSD that's happened previously. It was just so hard work. I had a meltdown. I had a full-on meltdown. To a point where I phoned up and I wanted to be sectioned because my mental health just... it was terrible. I couldn't function. They gave me the runaround, so I went to hospital because at this point My doctor then suspected that the stress and anxiety was then causing stomach ulcers, which had ruptured, and I had internal bleeding. So when I got to the hospital, they were trying to deal with a lot of things, but it was a mess. It took me an hour just to get through the door because there wasn't enough staff to temperature check people to even let you in the building. But yeah, I'd seen a couple of teams, and long story short, I was there for 9 hours. Around about 7 hours, I had a bleed, and basically bled through my clothes. And when I spoke to the main nurse, she said that it would be another hour or so before I got seen by the mental health team. So if I wanted to, I could go home and get changed. So I changed out of my blood-stained clothes, came back to A&E, and around 9 o'clock at night, I was then admitted to a psych ward, which was a massive, massive change compared to the other ward that I was on. It was really scary. There was a lot of people that were like psychotically out of their minds. But again, I was told to wait, I think, another 2 hours. Nobody had even acknowledged me. There was a young girl that was offering me cups of tea, but no professionals. To a point, I then had another bleed. So I went to the toilet, and I came back and asked the head nurse if she had some kind of way that I could clean myself up. I just needed some baby wipes or you know, something to clean the blood off me, because it had been seeping through my clothes again. But she said no, that wasn't an option. So I asked if I could go home and get changed again, and she said if I left, then that's it, there's no more treatment for me. Because I've basically been sitting there quietly by myself in my own thoughts, she said that I didn't look like I was in crisis, and that I should go home and maybe speak to my GP tomorrow or contact Rapid Response. Little did she know I'd already been through those avenues, and Rapid Response were one of the reasons why I ended up in A&E. After 9 hours, I felt completely helpless and absolutely defeated. So I basically went home, and I had my pills in one hand and my phone to call Rapid Response in the other. Thankfully, I spoke to somebody who understood, and they took me off a ledge. But on the 21st of December, just before Christmas, the lady that I spoke to said, she phoned me and said that this continuity is going to move forward, that my complaint has gone through, but it may take 6 months. Now at that point, even though the working tax credit fines were on hold, the other HMRC fines were going up £100 a month. I had no way to stop it. It just got out of hand. So I kept phoning. I was like, how can you charge me for something that's your fault, and now it's delayed because of you? And the guy said, there's literally nothing we can do. So throughout the whole of December, it just felt like a dead end. I was just caught in this Groundhog Day. I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping. I was being put through this system, faceless system, that totally destroyed my mental health. So in desperation, I decided to get all of my letters, all of the fines and the fees and everything else all in one place, and decided to call the HMRC one last time. It felt like I was starting all over again. Didn't speak to anybody that I'd spoken to previously. It's just a young guy. So I basically went through, explained everything from step one. And I was like, please, can I just pay this month's fees just to get that off my case? Because I'd already spoken to my accountant, and I said, what's the chances of the HMRC taking this full 12 grand if I give them my details? And he said, well, it's likely they are, which was wrong information as well, because according to the HMRC, they can only take the amount of money that you allow. But I don't think that's true. There's such a conflict of information. Like, what are you supposed to understand? Like, how are you supposed to learn when there's no real set answers? But I spoke to this guy and I was a mess. I told him I'd just come out of hospital. I told him that, like, I've been trying to fix this since July. This has been getting really out of hand. And he turned around and said, well, this is going to take 6 months. I said, yeah, I've already had that. Like, you need to stop the money. You need to stop the fees accumulating. He said, well, we can't. That's the way the system is. I said, well, the tax credit did. Why can't you? He said, well, that's a different system. So he then said, leave it with me. Give me 1 minute. Let me put you on hold. So he put me on hold. And then he came back and he said, don't worry about it. It's all sorted. So I said, well, what do you mean? He said, there's nothing to pay. It's fine. So I said, okay, well, what happens about next month? He said, no, don't worry about it. I said, well, you know, this is 12 grand. Like, I need to pay, like, I need to figure out what's happening. He said, I've taken the whole thing off your account. I was like, what? How can you do that? How can you do that? Plus, all the people that I've spoken to previously, why haven't they been able to do that? He said, we are so backed up on complaints and systems and stuff at the moment that it will take so long for us to get through to you, and from what you've said, it's not your fault. And he completely wiped my debt. One phone call. One person that knew their job and was able to help me in 7 months. I can't express how elated I was at that point. So, 7 months later, I received this letter. And it goes as follows. Thank you for your telephone call on the 13th of October 2021 and your subsequent calls about your tax credit complaint. I'm sorry for the delay in replying. We operate a 2-tier complaints process and have reviewed your complaint at the first tier. I've listened to the phone call you made to our helpline on the 13th of July 2021. The advisor told you during your call that your claim was an auto-renewal, which was the case for 2019-2020. However, the renewal pack issued to you for 2021 was reply requested. She then goes on to tell me a load of stuff I already know, which I tried to tell the phone clerk in the first place. But here's the best bit. I'm sorry the advice given was incorrect, and for the poor service you received when you called to make the complaint. Which one? I'm about 100 calls in by now. Anyway, I have sent feedback to the advisor's manager who will address any training issues. In 7 months I wonder how many other people's lives this guy's wrecked. But here's the kicker. Because of the worry and distress our actions have caused, I will send you a payment of £20 into your bank account within the next 21 days. This amount is not intended to put a... Sorry, I can't do this. Put a value on the worry and distress that you've suffered, but to recognise that we were the cause of it. Seriously. I am also sending you a payment of £20 to reimburse any costs you may have paid as a result of our mistakes. So I'm guessing if I'd have paid the £30 an hour for a personal assistant, they would have reimbursed that, but it was a gamble I couldn't take. If the £20 we've sent you does not cover your costs, please let us know. However, we will need to see evidence of these costs you've incurred. It could be itemised telephone bills or bank statements if you've paid bank charges as a direct result of our mistakes. I'm actually laughing in disbelief because I'm almost insulted by this letter. It's just... Can someone tell me in a comment below how I invoice for a mental breakdown exactly? There is absolutely zero empathy and understanding of what this type of mistake does to people. This one mistake caused a systematic domino effect that only a human could fix, but unfortunately I had no access to that person. So for 7 months of hell, over 12 grand debt, increasing payments every month, literally causing me to have a mental breakdown, causing me to have gastro bleeds and ruptured ulcers. They gave me £20 compensation, and they haven't even addressed whether the first guy that gave me the wrong information was either going to be retrained or fired or disciplined or anything like this. This has caused my brain to change. I don't know how to recover from this. I feel like a different person. It really has broken my brain. And I just want to say to people, I'm glad I've helped you. And I'm glad this channel will hopefully continue helping you. I'm just not sure how I can be myself at this point. I'm going to need a while to to fix myself, because I'm not right, and there's no system or service to help me with this. There's no, by helping me, they first need to blame that there's an error within the system. So yeah, things are just getting really bad at the moment, to a point where all of this anxiety and stress is now causing cortisol levels through my body. If you don't know what cortisol is, it's the fight or flight chemical in your body that kind of gives you that adrenaline to escape out of a situation. You know, primeval caveman against the saber-toothed tiger kind of vibe. But if you're in this fight or flight, anxiety, panic mode for as long as I've been in, causes chronic inflammation throughout your body and numerous health problems, which is what was causing my gastro bleeding. Obviously with my arthritis in all my joints, I was getting a lot of pain. So now my doctor wants to put me on fentanyl. I don't know if you've seen this video, but fentanyl is 100 times stronger than morphine and 50 times stronger than heroin. In fact, people mix this with heroin because apparently it's a bigger buzz. My system and situation is getting out of hand. I'm not taking these. So I'm not doing this for sympathy. I'm not doing this for donations. I'm hoping that Project Diaries will continue to be successful. Now it's spring. I'm just doing this video to say that I feel very different, and I don't know how I'm going to recover from this. I don't have a network or a support team. I don't have any health cares. I'm sorry, there's a disabled kid in the playground. He always has fun at this time of night. I don't know, so please bear with me. I'm going to do the best I can this year. I don't know what my options are, but I'm going to try and find some, and I'm going to try and figure this out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.